Welcome to Let's Talk to Animals. My name is Shannon Cutts of Animal Love Languages, and this is my 22-year-old feathered sidekick, Pearl. He never misses an episode, mostly so he can jump all over my keyboard and attack my mouse. But that aside, we're going to have a wonderful chat today with Miss Tami Hendrix, TamiHendrix.com, and that's HENDRIX.com. Tami, I'm so delighted to have you. I was sharing with you before I hit the record button that some of my fellow students in a recent training I took on animal communication have been so excited that you have agreed to be a part of Let's Talk to Animals. And so I had to kind of fend them off with a stick because they wanted to take over the podcast, which was really fun and awesome because it just made me more excited to meet you. For those of you who are watching on YouTube or maybe listening through one of your favorite podcast streaming services, the goal of this series is really just to connect people who love animals with different ways to tune in with your animals and with different animal communicators who are leading experts in the field, who have innovative methods, maybe have teaching programs, mentoring programs. You can you schedule sessions with them a lot, like Tami here have amazing programs of their own. Where you can learn more about communicating with your animals, with wild animals, with the wild nature and our planet, plants, even insects. The emphasis is just to let you know that it is possible for everyone. This is your birthright. Animal communication taps into the universal language of all species, which includes the human animal, you and me. And so Tami is generously gifting us with half an hour of her time today. And we are going to talk about what that's like. What is animal communication all about? How do you learn to speak it? How do you learn to do it? What do you do first? How can you use it? And how does it change your life? So welcome, Tami. So delighted to have you and excited to talk with you today.
Thank you so much. I've been excited to be part of this and looking very forward to connecting with you and all the listeners. And of course, the animals are all in on it too. They're our spiritual board and kind of directing things.
As well as our very hands-on supervision, right? We were just chatting before we started that we both have supervisors in the mix who are more than happy, whether invited to or not, to give their 2 cents into how we're how we're managing things, right? And which is why we never mind if we hear a bark or a screech, because we're talking about animal communication here. So it's all very lively and interactive. And, I always like to just start out by asking, to tell us a little bit about how you came into the realization that talking with animals is even possible. Like, what was that like for you?
Well, I think I'd have to go back to when I was a child. And I would spend a lot of time outdoors because inside was pretty chaotic in my home. Mm-hmm. And I would naturally gravitate outside and I would hang out in the backyard. I'd look at all the birds and watch all the squirrels and all the different animals out there. And I discovered there was a whole world, literally a whole world out there that was different from the human world inside. And so as I spent more and more time, it seemed very natural for me to just hang out with the animals, whether it was dogs, cats, squirrels, crawfish, frogs, it didn't matter. They all seemed like my family, and I didn't know any differently. So as I grew and I, had connections with the neighborhood animals, we got a dog named Ginger, and she would take me on walks around the neighborhood and pick spots to go visit people. And I would let her lead and I'd say, where are we going today? And so she would walk me to a house that maybe had somebody that needed a visitor. So we would hang out for a little bit and visit with the people. And this went on for years. And of course, I thought it was quite natural. And then all the dogs would come, kids have can so-and-so come play? And they knock out, it was the animals for me. They would like come to the yard and like, can Tami come out? But what I learned is, especially in watching, I did a lot of observing. And so there was a tremendous amount of taking in information at that time. And I noticed that the adults cloaked their feelings. They would say one thing and they would be feeling another. And I remember being confused by that because I could see through it. And then the animals wouldn't cloak their feelings. They were very open and transparent, and their hearts were open. So I guess from that early beginning, it honed my intuitive senses to pay attention on a different level and to listen on a different level. And I've carried that through to, where I am now. It's what I do naturally in what I have coined or called a soul speak conversation. That's a very, just like what we are doing, a very organic conversation that connects with your heart and allows for you to connect into that intuitive space to help you understand what your animal is feeling, seeing, hearing. It's a wordless communication that you're right. It's everybody's birthright. It's everybody's birthright. So, from that point, I noticed as I grew older, I had this weird, what I thought weird tendency to attract animals. So they would come to
weird,
me.
Right? So
they
weird.
Would come to me in
very kind of weird.
They're very different ways. And I, for a while there, I thought something was wrong with me because it was definitely almost like there was a neon sign out. And as I, got into my adulthood and had kids and had a house and things, animals would show up in different ways. They would actually come to me in dreams and then show up like a week later. There was a period there I would have a dream and then I'd be like scared to go out because I could feel one was coming. But it was really kind of actually amazing because the ones that have come were absolutely meant to be with me and to help teach and also to grow in their own soul path, because they too have their own paths where they're learning and alongside us, but also learning what they came here to learn as well. And so it's been this what I would call a magical incubator of circumstances that one could probably look at and say, oh, that was so hard for you, that was so tough. It was my childhood upbringing. It wasn't, it was every day was kind of rock and roll, but that created the compassion and the empathy that I have and the ability to see into the heart. You see the behavior, but you see the heart. And so I feel like Soul Speak conversations are seeing through the heart. And that's something we all can do. We all, especially in today's time, tend to live in our heads, from here up. And I really feel like every day of my life, I navigate with my heart. And that's always been my home, my center. And so that is what has given me the ability to just be with animals without any pretense and just meeting them where they are and them obviously meeting me where I am. So it's been an amazing journey of an animal sanctuary that developed and many, many different animals that have come over the years and have passed through enormous teachers. And I've been graced, I've been privileged to be allowed to be along their journeys.
What a beautiful way to picture it and to our minds craves understanding of everything, even while our heart is just working away in the background, completely unconcerned with whatever our mind is doing. It's a beautiful way there are so many people at work in the world actively helping animals, and a big part of the motivation, because I did feel like the animals asked me to do this podcast, and a big motivation for that is to say, you don't have to hang out a shingle. I say this a lot. You don't have to become a professional. Some of us are called to do that publicly, because maybe it's also a good fit with our background, with our interests, with just what sings to our hearts, so to speak. But I have met plenty of fellow students along the way, because we're all students. We're all continuing to learn. I mean, I don't think there's such a thing as mastery of animal communication. I mean, I haven't even mastered human communication yet. So I mean, it's going to take a really long time before, but, those of you who may be, tuning in, listening, watching, think about your heart for animals. I'm just going to assume that if you are listening or watching, you have a really strong interest or even a passion for animal welfare and also for people welfare, because those two tend to go hand in hand. And, the animals do teach us to live from our heart, and our heart is where all these great ideas come from. And also the ability to think outside that capitalist box and think, wait a minute, I could tune in, I could tap into this universal language. I could make more of an impact at the local charity or the rescue shelter that I'm volunteering at. I could help a foster animal just become adoptable. And there's no just about that. I don't even know why I said that. I could, one of my clients, I communicated with her dog that passed over, and then we had a little chat about the problematic rodents in her backyard, and I shared just a few things that I had learned from some of because there are practical techniques that you can use that help you to quiet the mind and open the heart and make a more authentic feeling connection. And she emailed the next week and said, all of the rodents are gone. She used I was like, so there you go. It's not difficult, guys. It doesn't have to be difficult. However, there's a lot of nuance to working with an animal and a human, because typically that's what's going on, is that you are communicating with an animal in order to assist that animal to speak with their human. And that's where, it can be helpful to have some mentoring, some training, some exposure on a regular basis, and building that trusted network of wise counsel and guides in your life to help you learn how to help that human to make a connection. So I'd love for you to speak a little bit more about that. I noticed on your website that Soul Speak is available for people and for animals, and that you also have your own podcast and YouTube series that I believe is also called Soul Speak. And you've got your own wildlife or animal sanctuary that you've got a lot going on. I would love to hear a little bit more about that. What's going on? There may be a flow when talking to animals, but then you get people in the mix.
Well, I always understood, and through my life in talking to different mentors and exposing myself to different ways of thinking with animal communication, that it's never just about the animal. It's always about the connection with the animal and the human. And so the animals will oftentimes be the catalyst that bring the human to the party, so to speak. Yeah. And, then this beautiful organic conversation comes up. And I feel that through my experience with the many, many animals that have come through my sanctuary and have passed on, who are there right now, it's like there has been a gathering of animals, even in my world, but also globally. Like there's a gathering going on so that we can raise our consciousness and help us all understand how to communicate and how easy it actually is. I think you're right with the nuance part. I think for me, it would be the easiest way to tap into that is to be outside. Go every day. I am outside in nature, even like a kid. And I bike a lot here in Asheville. And I thought today, I'm just like I was as a kid, biking around the neighborhood, because at this point, I know all the dogs, I know the neighbors. I'm like, hi, Allie, it's good to see you. And I'm doing the same thing all over again. It's hysterical. And they come and they meet me, and I'm just so amazed at the people that they are like bringing with them. They're like, me, my human. Take a look. They're a project.
See what I have to deal with? No, I'm just kidding. Sort of kidding.
They are hysterical. But they are definitely becoming more visible in a way that I think more and more people are becoming aware, maybe I can talk to my own animal, which ultimately that's what everybody would like. We can go to classes, we can study and practice, and all of that is useful. And in the end, we have to find our own way to connect and do it through our own process. And so I like to think we give pointers, and each person has to actually know how they receive information. What are the ways? If they sit with an animal, which is one of the ways especially if people have animals who are in transition, and they're wanting to know, oh my goodness, when they pass, can I connect with them? I always say, and I do this regardless whether they're in transition or they're just hanging out, is just sit quietly with them and be with them and see if you can feel their essence, like not the body, but what's their energy signature? What's their soul signature? How do you recognize that? And I had an animal, a dog that had passed that I communicated with the other day, and her name was Maggie, and she was saying, I have a distinct soul signature. And she said she recognizes that. So we finished the call, I go on my bike, and I heard her almost like tapping, like, hey, you forgot something. And I was like, what? And she said, I like soul print too. We all have soul prints. So I like that. I'd never heard an animal really describe it like that, but we do. We all have a signature essence that we can recognize in one another, and it is we're all sentient beings, so it's a communication from the heart. So I feel like we're all being given opportunities to do that, really all day long. We have the choice to see through the heart or wherever else, we see through. But the animals have been the wisest, the funniest, the most patient. I tell this story. I used to, when I was traveling a lot, I had Katie and Murphy and all the animals, and I have a couple barns and they're day play for them where they can go day play on the property. So I decided I need to tell them I'm going, and it was probably to a Sonia workshop. So I get them all gathered.
Right.
Right. So I'm like, okay, guys, I'm going to see Sonia and I'm going to be gone this date and this date. Well, I did this like 3 or 4 times. Finally, Katie looked at me one day. She was like, we've got it. Go. It's okay. You can go. Like, we heard it first time.
Sonia again? Yeah, got it.
That's right.
Sonia's show kit, by the way, for anyone who's listening. Tami and I share a connection in Sonia's show kit as well. But that's funny. They're probably like, yeah. We could hear you coming a mile away.
Yeah. It's like you get louder and louder. Can you hear me? And they're like, yeah, go. We're fine. Got this.
About to need earplugs here.
Yeah, and it is so interesting. I first of all, the idea of a soul print, that, oh my goodness, that really moves me. It speaks to the continuing presence and connection, even back and forth across the veil. The other point that you brought up that just really kind of sparked my interest when you said there's kind of been this gathering it feels like over the last 1.5 to 2 years, especially as we've been kind of, like you said, rocking and rolling, but kind of coping with this radical transition in how we live and find, trying to find some semblance of sanity in amidst the need for safety. There's been a lot more animal relinquishments, and there's been a lot more animal acquisitions, and
yes.
So it feels like our animals are in our lives for many of us, unlike maybe you and me, who have always chosen, have had the opportunity to be surrounded with animals, have even lived in a space where that was we had a bayou growing up right behind my house. It was constant parade of wildlife, and really shaped my experience of the world to have a wild space so close by, but not everybody has that. And so now we're kind of really like our animals are in our faces, just like our people, you know, and it's not always so easy. What seemed charming for a couple hours a day, you know, can feel maddening when it's 10 hours straight and you've got Zoom calls and kiddos that are now being homeschooled. And so I would imagine you've probably seen quite a bit more of this like intense, it's not even a desire, it's like curious, it's like, no, I need to talk to my animal, like I must get through to them, you know. And it's all about, can you just fix my dog or fix my cat, or you know. And it's like, let's take a look at that, because this is a huge time of learning for people and the planet, as we're coming face to face really with ourselves. And all of the mirrors around us. And that can come, our animals, I feel like our animals can reach us at a level. They have like a secret code to get right into our hearts, where the other people, the people in our lives, are kind of like they're a line behind the animal because they don't have the code, you know.
No, I agree. I think we're mostly undefended. Our hearts are undefended around animals. You know, the harshest, most gruff people can be melted in the face of an animal. And so, you know, it's all different types. I think they're stepping forward now. And I always tell people, talk to your animal. I always talk to my animals like I talk to my kids, as equals. I saw them as equals. I see them as equals. And so even now, you know, another experience as I bike, there are a lot of black bears in Asheville that are in the neighborhood.
Interesting.
And I love them. They're absolutely magical. I'm always so thrilled when I see a black bear, just, or a mom and her cubs, and I stop. And so this funny, I was rounding a corner one day, and this big black bear was, you know, standing there. And so I screeched to a halt because I didn't want to race by him. And he looked up and he rolled his eyes and he said, "It's you again." And I said, and it's you. And I said, and I need to get by you, by the way. And he said, well, I need to get that way. So we kind of stood there a minute, and he just kind of did like a, huh. And he went off into the woods like, you know, forget you.
There's no reasoning with her.
That's right. But it is, you know, the conversation is as natural as saying I love you to someone. And the animals understand that, and they actually are trying to get us to talk more from our hearts. So it may come in, you know, situations that come up in our lives that aren't very pleasant. Can you fix my animal? And the animal is like, hey, I brought the human to you. Like, can you do something here?
I know, right? I know. Totally. All three of mine are like, do you think you could just slip in a word with her, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's, you know, exactly. It is. Hi, I know, I'm sorry. I've taken over your desk, and now I'm lounging on your pillow, and I'm using your laptop, and it's just this whole work-life balance thing has got to go, right? You know, and it's interesting because I used to think that I would have to, you know, go to school. In fact, that's kind of how I approached it when I got it in a download. Early this year, there's been a lot of loss in my life over the past 6 months or so. My best friend, my partner, and I split up. My best friend passed, and then my father passed last month. And so it's been a real time of, I think probably a lot of people watching and listening can really relate to this. And then one day, in the midst of all this chaos and this loss and this grief, ping, just dropped in and said, you are an animal sensitive and intuitive. It's like, what is that exactly?
Right.
Would you elaborate? You know,
right, exactly.
So through a whole process, but then I thought, okay, well, I've got to learn this. I have to go back to school. And I kind of pictured this, you know, rather lengthy, rather grueling process. Maybe I wasn't exactly the person that's like, woohoo, college, best time of my life. No, I just didn't thrive in that kind of structured learning environment. So I made some mistakes along the way. So I would love it if you would speak to, you know, maybe there's somebody listening right now who either has an urgent need to communicate with an animal in their presence or in their family or just even in their backyard. What are some things that people can do right now that maybe won't require a huge investment of time or finances to get started?
I love
some
you asked this question. Yeah, no, I love you asked this question because one of the easiest and it's an amazing way that we can communicate not only with each other but with animals is by writing them a letter. And so if you sit down, some of the most powerful letters I've ever written, I had a dog pass and I remember being so angry at how he passed and what he'd done. So I sat down like, dear Eddie, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing it because I needed to do that. And, I love you and I want you to know. And then all this, like these feelings started pouring out and I was amazed. And I remember hearing a song, I think it was from The Lion King at the same time. And I just broke down in tears. And then all of a sudden I felt this need to write a letter to me from Eddie. So it's Dear Tami, I love you and I want you to know. And what came from that healed my heart. That's one of the best ways I tell people to communicate with your animal. If you think that you have to go to school or you have to do this or that, you don't. If you have a heart, you can communicate. You've got all the tools you need. It's in your heart. Even if you just sit with your animal and be in the same room and just be with them, no other agenda, be with the animal. It's amazing what communication can happen. I'll tell this story real quickly. I had a dog that chewed his way on the property, let's say, decided he wanted to come on his own. And I remember being like, no, this is not how it works here. Like, no. So I showed him back where he'd chewed on and like, you go right back to wherever you came from. And I was like, fine. So I walk off, he chews another hole, comes back in. We went through this about 3 or 4 times. So he ended up, I was like, oh, I think you want to stay on the property. So he ended up having severe heartworms and he's very, very sick. And I was so angry at him for how he came. Like he didn't get invited, he pushed his way on. And so I had that going on. But in the end, in the treatment of the situation, hidden physically, I can remember sitting with him for hours. And I remember watching him as he could barely breathe. And I knew he was deciding, his soul was deciding, will I stay or will I go? And I knew in that minute that I had an awareness that it really doesn't matter whether we're loved for a lifetime, a week, or a minute. If we've been loved for a minute in our lives, it's a rich life. And I decided then, if you are willing to heal, I will help you heal. And so, these animals that come to us, I was just talking to him like I talked to you, but I was talking with my heart. And people can do that. There's nothing that can prevent them from doing that except maybe a fear of going into the heart. And a lot of people are afraid of that. The animals aren't.
Yeah.
They're all.
That is a really, really excellent point because, there can be a fear factor when we've been vulnerable in the past and we have shared from our heart and a human has reacted in a way that made us think maybe I don't want to try that again. So, those of you who are listening or watching and can resonate with that, consider for just a moment what might be possible if that didn't happen, if you tried it again and it didn't happen. And I love, love, love the idea of the writing to start that process. If you feel too hesitant to just try the communication, just starting with the writing and feeling the relief and the release and just sitting with yourself, in a moment of allowing. There are lots of, once you get rolling and you've had that initial experience, of just feeling that heart connection through writing a letter, and then maybe progressing on to just sitting with your animal, or just sitting in the backyard if you don't have a quote unquote pet animal right now, sitting in the backyard with animals and just feeling what it feels like to be with them. And noticing, when I was in college, I already kind of mentioned it wasn't exactly the happiest time of my life. And I was lonely a lot. And I used to go, because I'd always adored birds and turtles. I would either find like a pond with a bunch of basking turtles, or there was a lot of that. I went to a large campus, a large university, or I'd go and I'd find like a flock of wild birds and I'd just sit with them. And it wasn't like they were, sitting all over me and my hair. It wasn't like I looked like one of those, St. Francis statues, but I noticed that there was a willingness to accept my presence. Mm-hmm. There was no resistance. There was no most importantly, there was no judgment. There was just a simple, and then I was privileged enough to live in India for 6 months, and that is in a rather rural area. And it got to the point where I'd be walking down the road, there would be people, there would be cows, there would be chickens, there would be dogs. And I could not tell the difference anymore. I just saw beings. Oh, we were just all walking down the road together. It's actually not an experience that I think about as much as you would think I would, given how powerful it is. But we can all have that experience right now. I feel like part of the disconnect and this ingathering of animals, actively trying to get our attention, and lead us back to our hearts and heal that loneliness that we can feel, is because up until about the turn of the century, we lived our whole lives side by side with beings of other species. Interspecies family life was normal. That was common. It would be very unusual to not have an animal, sheltering with you in your house when it got cold, or, right. Our animals were essential to our being safe and staying alive and finding food and feeling protected and having warmth. And now these little guys, those of you who are watching, I'm holding up my smartphone, these little guys have become our pets, and the whole concept of pet is a strange concept, but it's the only way we can navigate modern life and without losing our connection to animals. And the animals are willing to serve us in these ways. And so, you could spend a lifetime watching all the videos, taking all the courses. Chances are good, however, that there is a lot in your background right now that already serves you very well. And it's not necessary to go charging forth and sign up. Those of us who want to do it professionally, there can be benefits to studying longer term and seeing how things evolve and progress, and maybe finding our unique way, like you said, finding where we feel called to specialize, what sings to our heart, where we feel like we have the most value. But I will say this, for me, the number one most important experience I've ever had of communicating with animals was actually working with an animal communicator. Because you think, oh yeah, right, it's woo. A lot of people think that, oh yeah. My mom loves the fact that I communicate with animals. So she's always like, we're out on walks in the neighborhood. She's like, my daughter talks to animals. Want her to talk to your dog for you? And and I can see the expressions, but I've had a lot of folks like that where, once I share a message from their animal, it's like, oh, dude, that is totally my animal. Yeah. And it feels less woo, way less woo, because you can't make this stuff up sometimes. That's right. It's like, and so, I used to be that person. I still do. I hire animal communicators. I'm not an animal communicator. Well, now I'm an animal communicator, but one of the best ways to try it out. It's a minimal investment in the grand scheme of things. Maybe it's even on your bucket list. Maybe some of you are listening or watching and it's on your bucket list. I'd like to just talk to my animal just for an hour, just for a half an hour. Work with an animal communicator. You're listening to two of them right now. Right. And Tami's got an amazing program, and I work with Animal Reiki, and I have a fun 5-day free animal communication camp where you can learn about some of the things we were talking about earlier in this podcast and YouTube video about, learning about the different ways that you receive information. Some of that, just a little bit of mental tweaking to get your mind open, aware, and on board can be really helpful. So Tami, I'd love for you in closing, you have been so generous with your time. You're so easy to talk to, and I've just been fascinated with your stories and all the different, you said animals come in dreams, and I haven't been able to shake the question, what would happen if you saw a rhinoceros in your dream?
Oh, I know.
Like, oh my God, what's waiting outside this morning?
It's the truth. I was like, the inn is full. No. Like, I had a dream about an orange cat about 2 weeks ago. I was like, oh no. An orange cat may be coming.
Well,
yeah, no, I really like being able to offer people lots of ways to learn about animal communication. And, I see it more as talking with each other as opposed to talking to. So I think you and I are on the same wavelength there. And so that's why I've started it's a live stream on Facebook and YouTube twice a month. In fact, Wednesday, the September 15th will be my second show. It's called Tami's Soul Speak for Animals. And we are doing a topic, a theme, and you can ask questions. You can send in questions ahead of time, and we'll kind of explore different concepts, different themes about animals. In fact, the one I was given, literally it dropped in. I didn't have a plan. I was like, okay, somebody better tell me what this show is going to be about, because I need the memo, right? And I heard that it was about old souls and are we old souls? Are our pets old souls? And what does that really mean? And how do we find out? And so there's a lot of people wondering, with their animals. So that will be September 15th's theme. And then we'll have questions around there. I love working with people and having them discover their own unique abilities. That is so fun to me, watching them be able to connect themselves and go, oh my goodness, I was already talking with the animal. I'm like, that's right. So I'm really looking forward as that progresses. And I also have it's a group, Soul Speak with Animals, Soul Speak for Animals with Tami Hendrix on Facebook that you can ask to join. It's a wonderful, wonderful group of like-minded individuals, very caring people, sharing information, ideas, their thoughts. I love creating a community, and I honestly think that's what the animals are actually doing. They're creating a community in a lot of different ways, so that you feel the outreach to do the podcasts and the YouTubes and to do the camp. That's the animals are like, finally, we're getting through to them. They're a little hard-headed, but they're getting there.
Yep. And, I don't mind when my to-do list is filled up with those kinds of projects. It becomes a real stretching. It starts to make sense of pieces of my past life, jobs I've had, experiences I've had, where it's like, why the heck did I do that? I didn't even like it, or, how did I end up there? And it's like, all of a sudden, if you want to really start to understand yourself as a whole being, having a whole life experience, adding animal communication to your life experience is a really great way to do that. I often share on these podcasts that when I first actually had my first direct communication with an animal that I was aware of, it felt like pieces of myself were being woken up. They're activated. Like, there were programs that had been downloaded. They were free with the operating system. I just didn't know they were there.
Right.
And I just, all of a sudden, it was like the iguana I was talking to went into my applications file and found them and unzipped them and loaded them and installed them and turned them on. And I was like, wait a minute, there's a lot more to me here.
Right.
Than I had any idea existed. And that is a pretty cool bucket list level experience. So
Definitely.
Tami, thank you for sharing where people can find you. So Facebook, you have a live twice a month, and you have a private group that people can request to join, and then TamiHendrix.com.
Yes.
And that's where they can find access to all the archives.
Yes.
And
All the
connect
blog
with
posts.
you.
Yes. Archives, all the different shows that have links, and then how to connect with me with various sessions. Because I do work with people and animals, depending on what your needs are.
Yeah. And that is, I mean, I had hired many animal communicator sessions before I ever had any inkling I would be working with animals as a communicator, which is such a joy, but it one of the really good surprises in life. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But, it's a profound way to experience that our minds don't always know everything. Our mind might say, oh yeah, that's not a thing. And then our heart is going to be like, oh yeah, that's a thing. Sorry, we're just overruled.
That's right.
So thank you again. Of course, Tami is at TamiHendrix.com. My name is Shannon. I'm at animallovelanguages.com, where you can also find our podcast and our YouTube links for all of our archived interviews, and you can find Tami's session there. And we will look forward to connecting with you. Where is my sidekick? Oh my goodness, where did you go? Okay, he says, okay. Have you built it's always nesting season somewhere, right?
Right.
He built a lovely little nest right behind my hindquarters. Look at him, he's going back there right now. So, okay, on that note, it's been wonderful talking with you. Thank you again for the generosity of your time, and keep me posted on everything you're doing so I can share it and stay connected with you. And for all of you listening or watching, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time and your busy schedule and sharing your good energy and love for animals with us. And we will look forward to being back with you very, very soon. Okay, bye for now.
Bye.